Welcome to World Mission Topics Lesson 2. I do not own the rights to this music. Today's topic is Faithful to Man and God. The lesson text is coming out of Genesis chapter 39, verses 1 through 23, and Ephesians chapter 6, verses 5 through 9. The memory verse, moreover, it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful. And that's 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 2. The key terms for today's lesson: deputize, expedience, and stewardship. Deputize, to appoint a second in command or assistant who usually takes charge when his or her superior is absent. Expedience, suitable or advantageous for a desired outcome. Stewardship, the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. Suggested emphasis: if we were to define servanthood, a serviceable rendering might be putting the needs and desires of another ahead of oneself. We commonly use the designation servant to describe an employee, especially one hired to perform domestic tasks, but we could also consider more figurative uses of the word, as in civil servant or servant leader, to provide further shade of meaning. Servanthood speaks of subordination and humility. In this sense, saints are certainly servants of the Most High God. However, there may be a more apt comparison of the believer to that specific subset of servants known as stewards. To explore this more fully, let us turn our attention to the patriarch Joseph, one of Scripture's most famous stewards. Emphasis 1. The classic example of a steward. Joseph was pressed into servitude when his brothers sold him to Ishmaelite slave traders, and that's Genesis 37, verse 28. Via the Ishmaelites, he reached Egypt and was purchased by an officer of Pharaoh named Potiphar, and that's Genesis 39, verse 1, to serve in his household. The text affirms that the Lord was with Joseph, and that's Genesis 39, verse 2. Even in slavery, the implication is that he was diligent and faithful, and he was therefore rewarded with good success. Potiphar noticed how everything in Joseph's care prospered, and he surmised that the young man had divine favor. So he promoted Joseph to be head steward over all the household affairs. Joseph was the classic example of a steward. He was thoroughly committed to preserving his master's property. His single greatest test in this regard was the temptation posed by Potiphar's wife. Her licentious offers gave Joseph the opportunity to explain his convictions about stewardship in answering her. He reasoned that such adulterous behavior would clearly violate his master's trust, and on that basis would be a sin against God. Joseph understood that his stewardship was an expression of his faith. It trumped whatever carnal allurement Potiphar's wife possessed. It forbade any pragmatic concession to keep her contented. He would not violate his master's trust for pleasure or expedience. Emphasis 2. Suffering for his integrity. Repeated rejection made Potiphar's wife an enemy to Joseph. She engineered the young man's downfall with a false accusation of attempted rape, and he was thrown into prison, and that's Genesis 39, verse 20. Yet, with circumstances turned against him, Joseph did not relinquish his conviction about stewardship. He continued to practice the principles that made him successful in Potiphar's house, right there in the prison. The Lord opened a door of opportunity for him to serve the warden, and he did so dutifully. In time, the warden trusted all details regarding the prisoners to Joseph. Having complete confidence in the young man's probity, at least figuratively, he deputized Joseph, and the young man again proved he was reliable. We know from the rest of Joseph's story how he had benefited from his commitment to the principles of stewardship, just as Potiphar had entrusted his household to him, and as the warden had entrusted his prison to him. One day Pharaoh would entrust the kingdom to him. Joseph acquitted himself faithful in situation after situation, and then God proved himself faithful by elevating his station, by giving him greater opportunity for service. Joseph's wise stewardship over the resources of Egypt helped that nation become a storehouse in a time of dire famine. He not only saved the lives of his own Israelite clan, but those of many surrounding peoples and made Egypt far richer in the process. Emphasis 3. The distinction between servanthood and stewardship. There is a distinction between servanthood and stewardship. A steward is the type of servant that has been given authority to act on the master's behalf. In decision-making power, the steward is a representative or vicar of his lord, yet he is not an independent actor, and that he must maintain the values and instructions of the master. For example, the curator of a museum will lose her position if her employer discovers that she is collecting stolen artwork. Her impropriety would tarnish a respectable institution. Such a steward is not only accountable for aesthetic choices, but also for ethical ones when she is acquiring exhibits. For the Christian theologian John H. Westerhoff explained that stewardship is nothing less than a complete lifestyle of total accountability and responsibility before God. We are not just stewards of our families or of our ministries or of our material resources, etc. We are stewards of our very lives. We were bought with a price, the blood of Jesus. So our saved lives are God's property. And that's 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 20. We are now beholden to reflect the character of the rightful owner and to follow his instructions for the maintenance of that salvation. Yet he trusts us to make the relevant decisions about how to use these lives. We operate in the authority he has granted us as his representatives in the earth. Missions application questions. Number 1. What characteristics did Joseph consistently display that made him successful in each of his stewardships in Egypt? Number 2. In your own words, explain the subtle distinction between a servant and a steward. Number 3. What kind of authority has been given to believers? For what and to whom are they accountable? World Missions Prayer Points. Let us pray to faithfully manage everything entrusted to our stewardship. Let us pray for consistency as we take on greater responsibilities in ministry. And let us meditate on the many areas of life we are called upon to steward. The end. God bless you and thank you for joining me today.